and they really fucking matter. There's like 4 things that matter, and they really fucking matter. I mean, objectively, I mean, you should care, especially you, if you thought about it for 5 fucking minutes.
Welcome to episode 21 of the Outer Voices podcast. As always, this is Keem and Esmeralda de Apollo, and I'm going to keep saying your whole name.
Don't keep saying my whole name. It sounds ridiculous, Keem.
It sounds great.
It sounds ridiculous. Say your whole name too, or only say Esme.
My name doesn't sound cool.
It says you.
I'm going to make up a name if that's the case.
I mean, you have.
Yeah, I have a bunch of fake names. That's kind of my thing, but I don't want to confuse the audience.
Ugh. I'm gonna complain about this every single week. I'm gonna start doing the intro so that I can be called what I want. Respect people when they tell you what they want to be called, Keem. Basic human respect.
Okay.
Basic human respect.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyway, welcome everybody to this argument that is ongoing.
This is this will be our wrap-up show for Pride Month. Yay!
Aww. Pride Month is ending.
But Pride never truly ends.
That is true.
You know, it's everyday life, you know. And remember that, everybody listening, it doesn't have to be just Pride Month for you to go out and, you know, celebrate yourself. Every day, baby. Every day. Be proud. Let that rainbow flag fly. Roy G. Biv and black and brown.
Yes, all the colors.
Oh my gosh, I'm trying to be positive for before we get into the news, because that's going to devolve into anger.
Oh, as it always does. Always.
So, before I do that, we have a lot of good stuff coming up in the next couple weeks post Pride. So stay tuned. We got a lot of guests. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff. It's going to be great.
Yay!
It's going to be awesome. So I actually, as we go into the news, since I screwed up last week and forgot to get a news story, I'm going to be bringing 2 to kind of make up for what I've done. And also because these 2 made me extraordinarily angry this week. Like, ugh. I was angered starting earlier in the week, and literally last night I was still up, just laying in bed, pissed. So gonna start with those today. The first one, and we're gonna go with this one first because the second one is more in line with our topic for the week. So we're gonna do this one first. According to a court case in North Carolina, men are legally allowed to finish sex even if a woman revokes consent. And if you don't know what I'm saying, it basically means if 2 people are together and they start fooling around, and one of them says no. In this case, if the woman says, no, I don't want to do this anymore, at any point, the man is legally allowed to commit sexual assault.
Okay, so for I looked this up, right? I actually spent a minute researching this. Like what it actually says, what the law actually says. First off, this is a law. This is not a court case. This is a law that is on the books that says that, or it's a loophole in an existing law or whatever that says that if the initial act of penetration was consensual and then the person being penetrated changes. In this case, they're being very heteronormative. So the woman being penetrated changes her mind. If that initial penetration was consensual, the sex is still considered consensual up until the point that it's done. Right? So this is not sexual assault. This is rape.
Right.
This is penetration without consent.
So,
but legally, according to this law, because the initial penetration was consensual, the entirety of the penetration is considered consensual.
So you heard that. You heard that right, people. In North Carolina, hey, rape is legal.
But wait,
in a
did
way.
you figure out? Did you catch why this is in the news now? This is a thing that's been existent in North Carolina for like years, for decades. This initial court case was in 1977.
Right. Well, they instituted a they were trying to pass a bill to get rid of this.
Yeah, they're still working on it. That's why it's in the news now.
Yeah, but as far as it's being said that it's likely to get tabled.
And it's because of the pressure from conservative constituents who think that they should, for some reason, legally be allowed to commit rape. I don't know.
You know where this comes from? I tell you exactly where it comes from. Why the conservatives are putting pressure on it to not to be wiped out. It is the course of spousal rape. That's exactly where it's coming from. Because according to the Bible, a woman is a man's property once they're married.
Yeah.
And for a lot of conservatives, that is the case. And spousal rape is a continuous issue. And if this is wiped out, that means a woman will have the right to say no to a man, especially in the case of spousal rape. And that is non-biblical.
That is disgusting.
That is disgusting. That is absolutely disgusting. This, and I'll give y'all a little background. Besides this being absolutely heinous, because it is heinous, this shouldn't be a controversial statement. Like the fact that the Democratic people are trying to put a bill through to get rid of this crazy law that condones rape, that legalizes rape. The fact that they're doing that should not be controversial. There should not be any pushback against it. This should be simple. This is a simple case of consent. This is a simple case of rape. Taking rape off the books should not be controversial. That's like, it's crazy that we live in that world anyway. But on a personal level, this came up to me via the hell that is Facebook from a quote unquote friend, and I'll say this because his friend's not going to watch it because he's not going to watch this at all. Who posted this and said, "Yeah, well, I think this is a weird subject, and once a woman should really once you're involved in sex, it should be that. But if a guy doesn't stop, or if a guy doesn't stop, it shouldn't be that bad. Also, if a woman stops consenting after penetration is already over, she should be charged with sexual misconduct."
I got so mad. Mad.
And this led to a long argument, first with me, because I was not going to stand for that, and then with other friends of his, because, dude, you just you just, one, justified rape. And secondly, you said if a woman doesn't want to be raped, she should be charged with sexual misconduct.
She
That
should
is
be
the
charged
craziest-
with a crime
Exactly.
for changing her mind about having sex with you.
Exactly. I don't know what kind of bullshit he's into, but he needs to get that shit together. Like, that is not okay. That is not okay on any fucking level.
Yeah,
And
that's outlandishly ridiculous.
this is the mindset of the people who are pushing against the bill to get this off the books in North Carolina.
Exactly. Right. That's exactly why they're pushing for this, is because they are trying, they believe that they are so entitled to a woman's body that there is no circumstance under which it is okay for her to change her mind about having sex with them.
Right. And to me, it even makes men look, well, first of all, for even thinking that, it makes straight men, because this is a very heteronormative situation. It makes straight men, first of all, look terrible for even believing that shit, but it also makes us look like animals. Like, if a woman says no, that, well, a man is going to do it, he's going to do it anyway, because he has no self-control.
Yeah.
Because it's the woman's responsibility to not tempt him that far, because they know men have no self-control.
Oh, Lordy. Lord.
What the actual fuck? And this comes right off me being pissed about Bill Cosby last week.
Ooh.
Bill Cosby, who said he gave women drugs and then had sex with them. Not like, that was not consensual, because he gave them Quaaludes, and you can't consent to shit on Quaaludes. If you take Quaaludes, you are out. You are done.
Yeah. No, giving a person drugs with the intention of then having sex with them is rape, guys. I don't know if you know that. That's rape. Heads up.
Jury. I think it was 2 people out of 13 said, that's not too bad. They took the drugs, so, I mean, whatever happened to him was their fault. And this man got off. This guy admitted to rape and got off. And then has the nerve to schedule a tour.
Mm-hmm.
A tour now of town hall meetings to inform people about sexual assault.
No. Do you know what these talks are about?
Go for it.
To inform people, to inform men about what they should do if somebody accuses them of sexual assault.
My God.
Not to educate men about how not to commit sexual assault. How to educate them about how to deal with it when somebody throws that accusation at them.
So, basically, to be a better criminal.
Yes.
Now, like, and this has come up between you and I before. As a Southern black man, sexual assault and sexual assault allegations is a weird thing, because that is one of the weaponized things in our history against black males in the South. However, that is not the case in many cases.
Yeah.
And the very fact that Cosby got off, this North Carolina law exists, and the fact that he's going around the country to tell possible rapists how to get away with it. What the fuck kind of country are we living in?
Okay, so do you want to know something that's even more fucked up?
Go for it.
So, I mean, this is just to pile on more messed upness on top of this whole situation. So, and in the course of my research, right? So we have one state, North Carolina, where the law explicitly allows for this, right? But there are only 9 states that currently have a precedent that allows for women to revoke consent after penetration has occurred.
Right.
And only one where there's a law explicitly stating that women can revoke consent after penetration has occurred. In the other 40 states, there's no current ruling on it at all, right?
Yeah,
like it would be up to a judge's interpretation as to whether or not it would be okay for a man to continue having sex with a person after that person has revoked consent.
And I actually did know this. They call it a legal gray area.
How in the fuck is it a legal gray area about whether or not it's okay to continue having sex with somebody who doesn't want to have sex with you? How is this a thing that exists in the entire, like in ever in any place in the world? This is ridiculous. Sorry, I'm upset.
And like it and this kind of shit on the victim side, it basically tells the victims, one, they're not protected at all.
Yeah.
It also tells them that they weren't raped.
Yeah.
You wanted it, even if you decided you didn't. You wanted it. You weren't raped. This is your fault.
Yeah, this is your fault. You deserve this, and it prevents if this kind of law is on the books, right, where it's legal for this to happen, that could then legally preclude this person from seeking out like counseling resources or health resources following this, right? If you were legally not raped, you might not legally be able to access resources that are specifically aimed at rape survivors.
Right.
Whether that's mental health or physical health or what have you.
Very right. That's fucking insane.
Yeah.
It's... Oh my God. Yep. I can feel the rage like increasing again. and I know way too many women personally that this has happened to, who are struggling right now with the same issue. People I care about a lot struggling with the same, like, where this has happened to them. And for what my now former friend was saying this week and this news story, it's pushed me to this very, very weird, limit break situation.
Yeah.
And calm down. Because I need to calm down for a minute before we move on to the next news story.
Yeah. I will just say that I think that this is a symptom of this larger culture that we have, right? Where the cultural script is so strongly that men are entitled to sex and women are obligated to provide sex. And if that, to the point where even in a case, I personally have experienced, and I know many of my friends who have experienced this, where you get into a situation, especially a young woman going into a situation, right? You go into this situation and because of this script, because of this story that we're told from the time that we're really, really small, you go in and you know that the man wants sex and you're the woman and it is your duty, your obligation to provide sex. And so you feel uncomfortable saying no. That is an extremely common experience, right? Like even if the person, I keep using all of this very heteronormative gendered language, but this is the script that we're told, right?
Right.
You go in as a woman, like in a relationship, like going into a situation with a man, and you're going in, and the script that you have been indoctrinated with means that even if this man is not actually pressuring you for sex, you know, right, quote unquote, you know that he wants sex, and you feel weird about denying him that because men need sex, right? Men need sex, and women provide sex, and all this, and it's very, very like this really toxic, like coercive sort of culture around sex, and this is just a legal symptom of that same culture.
And it even flips around. It even flips around the other way. Like as a man going in, like you can, and I know men who have been in a situation where they've been pressured into sex, and to the point of they feel like they have to continue with something they don't want to do.
Yeah.
Because a man is supposed to want sex.
Yeah.
And if a man says no or turns down sex, he is less of a man. Or if a man is raped, if a man is taken advantage of by a woman, then he's supposed to like it and be fine with it, because men are supposed to want sex and we're supposed to give it to them.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like we live in a country where everyone's sexual expression is policed very heavily by everyone else all of the time. What? That's not a thing at all.
I can't deal with it.
Anyway.
And speaking of policing people's sexuality, let's go back to another southern state and their bullshit. Welcome to my good old home state of Mississippi.
Yay!
So, background before I actually get to the news story. Mississippi passed a House Bill 1523 under the guise of religious liberty. And basically what 1523 says that people can discriminate against anyone, based on their sincerely held religious beliefs. Basically, for the layman, that means in Mississippi, someone can discriminate against same-sex couples, trans individuals, any portion of the LGBTQ community, based on their quote-unquote religious beliefs.
I wonder if that extends to atheists, too.
Yes, it does extend to atheists. That's what came up. And because the wording on the law is not even just, while it does say things about, says a good deal about specifically same-sex situations, the law is very open to adding anyone under the you can discriminate against them as long as your religious belief thing, including, black people, because Mississippi doesn't have a history of that at all.
Oh, no. People using their Christianity to be discriminatory against black people? Nah.
Yeah. There's no way that could trickle down.
Nope.
But they passed this law last year. which was immediately overturned.
Yes.
Like within like a week of passing, it was like, no, you can't do this. This is constitutionally wrong. Like, no, you can't do it. This week, however, that was overturned, and Mississippi can now go forward with the implementation of House Bill 1523. Basically, it is about to be law. This is going to be law here in the state of Mississippi. First of all, I am happy to say that within 2 months, I will be leaving this fucking wasteland. Mississippi and I have a love-hate relationship. I want to love this place because I grew up here. I love the people here. The people I care about. There are some great people here in Mississippi, but Mississippi is such a fuckhole of a state.
Tell us how you really feel, Keem.
That as I drive off to Brooklyn and leave the state, I will be giving it two firmly held high middle fingers. I mean, I will be flipping them off harder than I've ever flipped anything off before.
Oh Lord.
But yes, so this is happening. This is happening right now in Mississippi. They're about to make this law, and my own personal nemesis, who I will challenge to a duel if I ever meet in person. Literally, with a white glove filled with rocks, I will slap the shit out of him and challenge him to a duel at high noon. Governor Phil Bryant, a.k.a. Phil Billy, the Confederate King. Oh, God. But Governor Bryant made a statement following the ruling. I am pleased that the Fifth Circuit has ruled to dismiss the case and allow House Bill 1523 to become law. As I've said all along, the legislation is not meant to discriminate against anyone, bullshit, but simply prevents government interference with the constitutional right to exercise sincerely held religious beliefs. So, yeah.
Also, if you are listening to this, which I don't think that any of our listeners would be listening to this and thinking this, but if you are listening to this and thinking, well, I don't belong to the LGBTQ community, what does this have to do with me? Think back to all of these things that, to all of the things that these so, like pious Christians complain about all the time. Right? That they complain about doing or whatever, right? So if you are in a same-sex relationship, people could claim that that's against their religious beliefs. If you're transgender, if you are black, like Keem pointed out, if you are a woman who uses birth control, if you use condoms to prevent STDs and pregnancy,
if
right?
you have premarital sex.
If you have premarital sex, right? If you are Muslim.
In an interracial relationship, because that has actually happened.
Yes.
Already. Right?
Any of these things. So this doesn't apply so much if the person refusing you service is like Christian, but what if I don't know, like you could like go to the grocery store and a Jewish person could refuse to like sell you your bacon, right? Or right, there are so many ways that this could be used, and it's dumb.
And this also applies to employment. An employer could fire you. You could lose your job because
for any of these reasons.
Any of these reasons. You could be kicked out of your home. There was a couple in Tupelo, Mississippi last year who were kicked out of their rental because the landlord didn't believe that interracial relationships were biblical.
Yeah,
And
I mean, let's be real. For LGBT people, like, there's still in 29 out of the 50 states, it is still legal for an employer to fire you or for a landlord to kick you out of your home if
Right.
you're being LGBT. Like, that's a whole other thing.
Right. But see, at least more than likely in those states, you can at least fight it.
Yeah.
Mississippi just eliminated much of your ability to fight it.
Yeah.
Like I said, it can be anything. I actually wondered though. I have been wondering this. Let's see. I wonder if this. How would Mississippi feel if the roles were reversed? Let's say me as a atheist, and that's a firmly held belief, very firmly. Mm-hmm. Opened up a nice store, put out a big sign that says, "We do not serve white Christians."
Yes.
Because it is my belief, not really, mind you, but it is my firmly held belief that it is not right to be a white Christian. And I will not serve them. I do not have to serve them. And I would have all the nicest things, you know. I would have all your Ole Miss memorabilia. And Mississippi State. I know Mississippi loves their football. I get all the signs. Sweet tea, just like the sweetest, most delicious fucking sweet tea in the world. I had some rebel flags up in there. I had all the shit they like. Put it on prominent display, and everything costs like $3. Like best rates in town. But a big sign out front that says, "It is my religious belief that white Christians are not okay and are not allowed in my store." I wonder how quickly that this law would get looked at. And that's the thing I can't fucking stand about, especially these stupid Mississippi politicians. Governor Phil Bryant, I'm talking to you. If you ever hear this, I'm talking to you, you fuck. If the situation was turned around on you, you would have a problem.
Do you know what I kind of want to do? I kind of want to go turn their own biblical nonsense on them and claim that as a sincerely held religious belief, right? And create this very wonderful, nice store that has all the things, right? And then claim that my predominant, like my firmly held religious belief is that the first shall be last and the last shall be first. And so I do not serve anyone like I don't serve people who are all of the hierarchy, right?
Right.
I don't serve cis-het white Christian people. Because the first shall be last and the last shall be first.
I wish you would stop promoting white genocide.
I know, right? It's just the worst. It's just the worst. Kill all the white people.
But yeah, like, but basically, how would you feel, Brian? How would you feel, Lieutenant Governor, and all you other fucks, if that was turned around on you? If you couldn't go places because of what you are, or you couldn't do things because of what you are, probably wouldn't like it, huh?
Probs not.
You probably wouldn't like being treated like a second-class citizen.
What?
But I wouldn't know. I mean, I'm black. Oh, wait. I can't, like, Mississippi can burn for all I love this place. I would love to come down here and change it. I would love to come down here and help uplift people and make Mississippi the place that it should be. because there are so many people I love, so many people that deserve an opportunity, a chance to live the life that they should be living. But nothing short of a goddamn war is going to change these crazy Mississippi minds.
Mm-hmm.
Even Dr. King and Medgar Evers said it. And Medgar Evers got shot in his own damn yard.
Mm-hmm.
If that tells you anything. They even said it. It's going to take a war. It's going to take bloodshed to change Mississippi. Because this is insanity. They are constantly looking for ways to discriminate, to hate, to make people second-class citizens. And that blows my mind. In 2017, they're continuously looking for ways to hurt people. For the pure reason is that those people make them feel motherfucking icky.
Yep.
And with all this anger that I'm feeling right now, and as we get ready to move in to our topic segment, I would like to highlight our artists for the week. These guys are from Memphis, Tennessee. They had a recent write-up in Afropunk, which Afropunk is the shit.
It's true. It is amazing.
Go subscribe to Afropunk, read up, great music, and like great everything. There's some really great stuff on Afropunk. But they got a write-up in Afropunk. They're a black punk band from Memphis. Now, I'll tell you, probably not the I wasn't the biggest fan of punk. I just started listening to punk music like this year, okay? But with all this anger that I'm feeling recently, they have helped me express some of it. Because nothing helps you work out anger quite like some nice, angry motherfucking music. Especially some angry music with a point.
Yes. Punk music is good for that.
These guys have a point. They're called Negro Terror, which incredible name. Like, go ahead and say that now. Negro Terror, incredible name. It's I love it, guys. I love it. Negro Terror. But we are hopefully going to have them on the show. Hopefully as a guest as guests next week, but definitely for an interview.
Yes. But
like I said, these guys are great. So, and like I said, to highlight this anger and this feeling that I have right now, that we have right now, before we go into our topic segment, we're going to bring to you support from Negro Terror.
it's a wrap-up! Right! Fucking!
Welcome back to our topic segment of the week. Also, it's our last topic of Pride Month, and we wanted to end this. We wanted to end this at the beginning, and we're going to give you a little background on how Pride started, why, what it means, because. You know, I like seeing everyone go through the pride stuff. It's it looks like a lot of fun. A lot of people proudly displaying who they are and themselves. But I'd like to have a reminder that pride is also very much revolutionary. Mm-hmm. It's not just about standing out. It's making a revolutionary statement. So I'm going to let Esme take over with the I guess first. Despite me being a historian, I don't know too much about this, and I had to do some research on my own. So I'm going to let Esme start us off with the background of Pride.
All right. So if you pay attention to the internet at all, I am sure. Or movies or pop culture or anything, I am sure that you have heard that Pride, as it exists today, actually started with the Stonewall Riots. There was a movie that came out last year called Stonewall, about the Stonewall Riots, about the starting of Pride, and that's starting to be known as the origin of Pride, where this celebration comes from in the first place. So first off, like why? I was gonna say, why does Pride exist? Why is Pride a thing? But that's what we're talking about, right? So Pride, as it exists today, is very much a celebration. Right? You go and you gather together with other members of the LGBT community. You, in many places, you sort of take off all your clothes and let it all hang out. There's rainbows everywhere. It's a very upbeat, joyous, rambunctious sort of time. Even in Memphis, Tennessee, where the celebration is very much oriented toward being family friendly. In a lot of conservative or small town or smaller communities, the celebration is explicitly oriented towards being quote unquote family friendly. Like even in these places, though, it's very much a celebration of who you are and how you live and joining together in community to build one another up. But the origin of Pride was in rage, was in oppression, was in the struggle and the push for liberation. And it's and that's the origin of this, and that's not something that's reflected in a lot of Pride celebrations now at this time. So, Keem, what do you know about the Stonewall Riots?
So this is from what I looked up. So apparently, the Stonewall Riots, there was an inn, the Stonewall Inn.
Yeah.
It was a actually mob owned inn, but
it was a bar. They called it the Stonewall Inn, but it was a bar.
yeah.
Right.
But it was basically used. It was allowed to be a safe haven for like members of the LGBT community, for like your trans, your homosexuals, basically just about everyone, almost like a I'm going to say a gay speakeasy during Prohibition. And so the cops.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently it was like common for the cops to actually be there, because I mean there were a lot of prostitutes there as well.
Yeah.
So
many of whom were drag or transsexual or transgender. Transgender wasn't really something that was common terminology at the time. It was usually transvestite or transsexual was the terminology of the time. But especially at this kind of bar, many of the sex workers who would have been there would have been transvestite or transsexual prostitutes.
And if I'm not mistaken, it was like almost majority people of color patrons. Yeah. But the cops were like very often there to get used to the prostitutes mainly and be paid off, because that's what but the cops raided the place.
Yes.
And the people there stood up, basically, like they stood up for themselves.
Mm-hmm. And
it straight up evolved into a riot where the people were saying, okay, we're not going to take any more of this. We're not going to continue to be treated like this. And the cops doing what cops do in the situation, basically.
Yeah. So, that's the basic facts of what happened. There's a lot of really, as you start to dig into it more, there's a lot of really, really interesting, very, very, like a lot of interesting pieces of this that are very, very connected both to other things that were happening in the United States around that same time, and things that still bleed over into the kinds of things that we see now.
Right.
So first off, it was very, very common for the mob to be running. This was technically an illegal bar. Like, the main justification given for why the police came to raid that night was because this was a bar that was serving alcohol without a liquor license, which was an extremely common thing at the time. And was a great way for the police to come in and round up people, and make a bunch of arrests, right? Keem, historian, can you think of another instance where police came in and raided a bar because they were serving liquor illegally, and it resulted in a riot?
Oh, don't put me on the spot. Don't put me on the spot today. Because it's slipping me.
Detroit.
Detroit. Yep. Never mind.
Anyway, but yeah. So this is again one of those things that's a connection throughout like what was going on at that time, right? This was an extremely common way for the police for the authorities to police and control and intimidate oppressed populations, right? They did it with black people, and they did it with the LGBTQ community, right? They would go in because LGBTQ people couldn't go into regular bars. Why not?
Because that wasn't allowed. I mean,
yeah. So we're talking specifically about New York in this instance.
Yeah.
The Stonewall Inn is in Greenwich Village in New York. On the books in New York and in most other places, it was on the books as illegal to serve liquor to a gay person.
Right.
They could not legally be served in a regular establishment. It was illegal for anyone to go out in public dressed, quote unquote, unnaturally, right? So men could not go out wearing makeup or dresses. It was, women could be arrested for wearing fewer than 3 pieces of quote unquote feminine clothing, right?
I saw that.
Yeah.
That was insanity. Yeah,
and so people's gender expression was being policed very, very heavily, was being legislated very, very heavily. And so you couldn't go out in public and be who you wanted to be, dress how you wanted to dress, have like physical expressions of affection with the people that you wanted to in a normal establishment. And so the mob would set up these bars that were run under the table. They were illegal. They were not regulated, but where LGBTQ people could go to dance with each other, to celebrate one another, to hang out, to be who they were in public, just like normal people do. So what? Just like normal people do. And of course, these bars were all paid off by the mob, or the police for these, or the police in the area was all paid off for these bars by the mob. They were paid protection money, basically. But still, if they had maybe somebody wanted to make a statement about gay people, right? What politician or whatever, somebody who's pulling the strings on the police wanted to make a statement, or the police needed to hit a quota, or something happened, they would go in and they would raid these places and round up a bunch of people and arrest them for doing all of these normal things that they were doing that all were illegal because the expression of LGBT people was legislated. So they would round up these people and arrest them and haul them off to jail and get their bail money and whatever. It was a whole thing.
It's kind of exactly like they did to another group of oppressed people, marginalized people. I'm pointing this out because the argument keeps coming up in the circles of my life and in the general community of why black people and the LGBT community should be working together. This is why, people.
Yes.
What she's saying is why.
I'm going to take a pause. Everyone listening to this right now, there is only one struggle. There is only one fight. And it is the fight for liberation of all marginalized people. We all have a common enemy. There is one thing keeping us all down, and it is the same thing that is keeping all of us down.
Doing the same things to all of us.
Yes, and it will continue to work until we all see that the thing that's keeping us down is the same thing for all of us. Okay, that's my pause. Now let's go back to the story.
Back to his lesson.
Yes, back to the story. So on this particular night, which is actually June 29th, so it's actually extremely appropriate that we're doing this as the last week of Pride Month, because this week actually marks the anniversary of the Stonewall Riots. But so on the night of June 29th, or early in the morning of June 29th, actually, I think it was like 1 o'clock in the morning on June 29th that the police came in to raid this bar. They came in, they rounded people up, they arrested a whole bunch of people, and they arrested a whole bunch of people, but the squad cars, right, the means of transportation to the jail did not show up for it. They didn't have enough of them right away. So they had a whole bunch of people sitting handcuffed on the sidewalk, which of course attracted a whole bunch of attention. So people started gathering around to watch them, to see what they were doing, to see what was going on. Why were these people all handcuffed on the sidewalk? In this part of New York City, many of the people in the neighborhood would have been members of the LGBTQ community, right? Maybe they were, I don't know, at a different bar that night and were on their way home. So a lot of these people would have been LGBTQ. Many of them, the people passing by on the street, would have known these people, would have been friends with these people who were sitting in handcuffs on the sidewalk. In fact, that's what it was. These were like, let's walk by and see my friends and neighbors sitting handcuffed on the sidewalk with police standing over them with batons, right? Just in case. And then as the crowd grew larger and larger and more upset with what was happening, a few people decided to do something about it. One of these people, the person in a situation like this, it's extremely difficult to pin down accurately, like who actually did the first thing. But the person who's commonly credited with throwing the first bottle at the police is a trans woman named Sylvia Rivera, who is, as I'm sure that you can tell, a woman of color. She was 17 years old at the time. I don't know if you know that, Keem.
I did, actually.
Yeah, she was 17 years old at the time, and was very active very much a part of the community at that time. Another person who is commonly credited as one of the primary instigators of this riot was Marsha Johnson, who is a black trans woman. And many of the people who would have been there were people of color, LGBTQ people of color, primarily trans women of color, were some of the most were made up a large part of the patrons of this bar.
So according to, and I've looked at an interview with a person who was there, the person said likely it was about 70% people of color. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking for a statistic, there you go. About 70% people of color.
So I read a very interesting article as we go through and start and continue talking about what it was that actually happened on this night. So this was not the first time that this had happened, right? No. This was a fairly common occurrence among the gay establishments in New York City at the time, for the police to come in, despite having been paid off, for the police to come in, raid the place, arrest a bunch of people, get their money, and then and whatever, right? This was not the first time. But why, Keem, on this night did it escalate into a riot?
Why?
So I was also reading interviews. I believe it was NPR did an interview with several people who had been there. And earlier that day, many of the patrons who were at the Stonewall that night had been actually at the funeral of, wait for it, Judy Garland.
Oh.
Yeah, Judy Garland, gay icon, blah, 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 right? Extremely iconic person for the LGBTQ community, even at that time. And still today, right? If you talk to a gay person, particularly a gay man, they're very much like Judy Garland icon, right? But so many of the people who were at the Stonewall that night had been camped out outside of Judy Garland's funeral, like paying respects. And so, like, tensions and emotions would have been running extremely high.
Right.
This is unsubstantiated, but there were several people in this interview who were like, who credited the high emotions caused by that event as to the reason why, like, this was we've had enough and we're not going to take this anymore, right? Like, you're not going to pull this on us, not today. Right? Not again, not today. So interesting tidbit. But for whatever reason, emotions were running high that day. Tensions were extremely high. And as the crowd outside the Stonewall, who were coming to see what the police were doing, who were coming to watch the police arrest and cart away their friends and their neighbors, somebody, again, often credited as Sylvia Rivera, threw a bottle at the police. And then the people in the crowd who had gathered, this wasn't the people who were in the bar. This was the people who were outside, who had been gathering, began to throw things at the police. And then as the crowd got more and more violent, more and more enraged, the police actually went inside the bar and barricaded themselves in the bar. And the crowd outside, set the barricade on fire. In this, and so, the event got bigger and more violent and turned into a full-on riot. As part of this, before more reinforcements arrived from the police department to shut everything down.
Right.
But yeah, so that's the Stonewall Riots.
And also, like to point out, I'm reading some more as the crowd was like forming and things were starting to break out. People were singing "We Shall Overcome."
Mm-hmm.
Gay power, and like, remember the time period this was. These people were also like, and once again, there were many people of color. These people were also just dealing with the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
So the country was already in a place where people were standing up and demanding equal treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a community that, as you can tell by what happened, decided to go, you know what? We've had enough.
Yeah.
We've had enough.
And these two movements actually can't be separated, right?
Right.
Like, many of the people who were there, many of the people who were on the street had participated in various actions, right? Some of the earliest organizers of some of these events were active in the civil rights movement, were active in the feminist movements, were active in the anti-war movements. These things are all connected. They have people in common. These are not separate movements.
Right.
So,
well, it's kind of as if, once again, as we said earlier, we're fighting against the same people, like the same enemy, and the struggles really can't be separated. They come from the same place and the same motivations. But with that being said, and this goes back, I also like to go back to with this being the history of Pride. When we discussed in an earlier show the adding of the black and brown stripes, once again, many of these people were people of color.
yes.
who very often in the which keeps coming up now, and very often kind of gets left out of the narrative of Pride. They actually there was a movie on the Stonewall Riots last year.
Yep.
And that was a big problem with the movie. It was whitewashed all to hell.
Yes.
So again, that's a huge problem.
Yeah. If we're talking now about the Philadelphia's new flag design with the black and the brown stripes, I was reading that actually was in response to current situation in Philadelphia where there has been a lot of violence toward trans LGBTQ people of color, specifically at the hands of the authorities lately. Right, there's been a lot of instances in Philadelphia recently of people of color being abused or being arrested or being whatever at the hands of the police, and that was one of the reasons that they decided to include that in Philadelphia right now, is because this is still something that is going on where people of color within the LGBTQ community are still disproportionately targeted for violence.
Right. It's almost as if history, if we don't learn something, history will continue to repeat itself.
What?
My goodness. But I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time talking today.
That's fine.
But with that being said, it's we have to remember where this all started. Like I've said it before, I'm a historian. I'm all about knowing history.
Yes.
And how important history is to the future. We have to know. And with Pride Month has, and I've noticed, I'm talking very weirdly, I've noticed has grown more in the past couple of years than I've ever seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is logical considering everything's going on in the country right now with so much pushback against the LGBT community. It's at an apex.
Yeah.
But at that apex, it is very important to not forget the start.
Yes.
And like I was saying earlier, at the start of Pride is a very revolutionary mindset.
Yes.
It is a mindset of we are being abused.
Mm-hmm.
We are being, and we said this again, the cops were there a lot.
Yes.
And this wasn't just a singular incident. This was something that was happening over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Combined with the fact that not only were the cops doing this, but they were also coming in at other times to get their payoffs, to come in and pick up trans women, or from what I've heard, also young male runaways and young prostitutes.
Yes.
So, the police were using these people, and then when it suited their needs, throw them and their lives away.
Yes.
So these were people who were finally standing up and saying, you know what, enough is enough. We're not going to be used like this. We're not going to be your tools. Yeah. We're not going to be here we're not going to be here for you to use, and then you can use us to make a statement. Mm-hmm. We're not going to be your scapegoats. We're people. We should be treated as such. We shouldn't have to even be hiding in this bar.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing that came out of the Stonewall Riots. There was a push to get rid of hidden LGBTQ establishments.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no more hiding, no more being in the darkness, no more letting the rest of the world tell us where we can go and who we can be.
And actually, that provides a good transition into the other thing that I wanted to talk about with this, which is how did we get from the Stonewall Riots to a Pride Parade?
Right. There you go.
What's the link there? Keem, do you know?
Being the push to being open, to being visible, to not having to hide.
Yeah, so...
But I'm sure you have the specifics. So
I do.
I have
so many specifics. I love history. So, unsurprisingly, right? Unsurprisingly, in the months following the Stonewall Riots, there was a group of people in New York City who wanted to do something to commemorate that, right? Something to say this was the largest event in history of LGBTQ people standing up and doing something against their own oppression. It was the largest number of people, the most notable, the biggest event that had happened for this in history. And so there was a group of people in New York who wanted to put together something to commemorate that, something to continue that fight. So in the months following that, there's a group that got together to plan an event, a march on the anniversary the next year of the Stonewall Riots. So on the 28th of June the next year, they were going to have this march. And the conception of this, remember that one of the reasons that gay and trans people had to go into these establishments was because it was illegal for them to dress and express themselves the way that they wanted in public. And one of the core components of this march from its conception was that there would be no dress regulations. There would be no rules for this event about how people should dress.
Right.
Which was in contrast. So up until this point, there had been people working for LGBTQ liberation, right? To work for rights, to work for freedom for LGBTQ people, but they were very much rooted in the respectability politics,
exactly.
Right?
Oh my God.
I know how you feel about respectability politics, Keem. But the people who, up until this point, had been spearheading these efforts were very much rooted in the idea that the only way to have an effect, the only way to be taken seriously, quote unquote, be taken seriously in this push for liberation was to follow the respectability rules imposed on people, or imposed on the community by the cishet white dudes, right? By the people who were in charge, which means that up until this point, anytime there was an action planned to push for something, the men in the group, quote unquote, this again, very heteronormative, very cis-normative, like erasing people with alternative gender expressions. The men in the group were asked to show up in a suit and tie and a hat. And the women in the group were asked to show up in a dress and heels. In all of these. But this march was explicitly, from its conception, planned as an event with no dress code. There was no restrictions, no guidelines, no rules posted about what people should show up in. which means that from its very conception, a lot of people showed up in things that would have been illegal, that would have been considered very subversive for the time, right? Drag performers would have shown up in their drag and their full makeup. Transgender people would have showed up in the outfits that they felt comfortable in. Even from that time and way before, it was common for lesbians to dress butch, right? Butch is something that's been included in like lesbian expression, like gender expressions since forever, right? Like the teens or something, or probably before that, for like female identified people who are attracted to people of the same sex, for them to wear men's clothing or men's style clothing, and have that butch expression. So many lesbians would have shown up in trousers and a men's shirt, right? And they would have been at these things that would have been explicitly like excluded from any action before then. This was included from the very beginning in this march, which was originally called the March for the Liberation Day March, right? The Christopher Street Liberation Day March, because the Stonewall Inn is on Christopher Street, in the Village. But so that was now the very first quote unquote Pride Parade, right? Was a march in celebration of this, in commemoration of this, and it was organized. I love this. Organized and put together and spearheaded primarily by a woman named Brenda Howard, who Keem doesn't know who Brenda Howard is. But we're going to educate. So Keem, pop quiz. What two groups of people are most excluded from current LGBTQ communities?
Gonna say bisexual.
And if we're just talking about people who are included in the acronym, I should say.
Trans?
Yeah. Bisexual and trans people have a very, very hard time feeling welcome in mainstream celebrations, especially like large-scale mainstream celebrations, right? There's still a ton of transphobia in the LGBT community, like from cis LGBT people, right? And there's a ton of biphobia and bi-erasure that still happens in these communities, to the point where there was Morgan and I talked about this a couple weeks ago, to the point where there was a meme that was going around where somebody had posted on like Tumblr or something about what makes bisexual people in straight relationships feel like they can be included in the LGBT like events, right? So we've talked now about transgender people and how it was really trans women, specifically trans women of color, who instigated this event, that kicked off this push, that really provided that foundational, that formational experience for this, right? For this liberation movement for LGBTQ people. Brenda Howard is, wait for it, openly bisexual. The people who are in charge, the people who are responsible for what we now experience as Pride Month, Pride events, were bisexual and trans people.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so Brenda Howard was an openly bisexual person, also polyamorous, also kinky. So she was very open in all of these.
I saw that. Saw that when I just looked it up.
Mm-hmm. But she had been active. She was one of those people. She was active in the feminist movement before this. She was active in the anti-war movements during the 60s. And because of her experience, she was one of the people who was put in charge of spearheading the organization of this march. And actually, from the very beginning, it was called Pride. It was originated as the Christopher Street Liberation Day March, and then very early on, as part of the push to select a slogan for themselves, they originally had thought of gay power, but at that time, that was almost like an oxymoron, right? Like at that time, openly gay people didn't have any political power. Transgender people didn't have any political power. And so somebody during that meeting said, well, we don't have power, but one thing that we do have is pride. And so then from the very beginning, pride was a central part of this march, a central part of this event. But yeah, so that's how we got from the Stonewall Riots, right? An actual riot, to what we now experience as a march. A parade, as a whole celebration.
That statement they made, which I love that. I'm glad you told me that. I think it's a statement that like every marginalized group in this country should be saying. Even if we don't have power, we do have pride.
Yeah.
We are who we are. And we're going to keep fighting until we are recognized as the humans we are. And even if we don't have power, even if the world's against us, we still have our pride. We still have who we are.
Yeah.
And that is it's a beautiful fucking sentiment. That's what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's awesome. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I think, is there anything else you wanted to add in?
No, not really.
Okay, I think this is a good place to end because we've gotten from the beginning to where we are now.
Yeah, we could go into the whole politics of the experience of people of color at Pride events. We could go into the controversies that have been happening, especially this year, about the involvement of police at Pride events. But that going into those things could easily make this episode twice as long as it should be.
Yeah, no, those are other shows.
Those are other shows. They're important, and they're important to be aware of. And if you are curious about those things, Google them, because there are many, many excellent pieces written, especially by Black people, Indigenous people, Latinx people, about their experiences as a person of color at a mainstream Pride event, especially with regards to the presence of police, the commodification of Pride, right? Like using Pride as an opportunity to sell stuff to people, the involvement of the sponsorship of Pride events by like porn companies is very controversial. A lot of people have a lot of things to say about it. So if you're curious about any of those things, Google them, because they're extremely well written and insightful pieces of analysis about those things, available all over the internet. But this could easily turn into a show that is several times longer than it really needs to be. But I will drop it there. I'm going to stop talking now.
And I just want to add one final thing, and I think a reminder that from its very beginning with Stonewall Riots to what it is now, Pride is a very revolutionary movement.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about, having fun and being happy. It is a very much a revolutionary movement. My listeners in the LGBTQ community, or LGBTQIA, all of you, your very existence, who you are, what you choose to do, it is a revolutionary act. Your visibility is a weapon against the people who try to tear you down.
Mm-hmm.
I think our whole series this month, as we talked about the inclusion of people of color in Pride, the erasure of bi and trans people, and all the other things. I know I'm missing something. Almost all of it has centered around visibility.
Yes.
Because visibility is extraordinarily important. Because, like I said, just you being visible, just you being who you are, you representing who you are and displaying it proudly, is an act of revolution. It is an act that battles against the people who want to oppress you. It asserts who you are as a human, that you deserve to be treated like everyone else, that we all deserve to be treated equally.
Mm-hmm.
LGBTQIA listeners, I'm doing all the acronyms, baby. Listeners, people who might get this shared with them, listeners who aren't in that community, who have friends, go remind them. Friends, family, loved ones, go remind them. Go remind them that they are revolutionary. Remind them that they are great, that they are standing. Stand with them and stand.
Yeah. I'm going to say, as a person who is in the LGBTQ community, who is not out in many parts of my life, I am not out. I talked about this on the show with Morgan. There are large sections of my life where it is not currently safe for me to be out because it could put my livelihood at risk. That is a reality for many, many people in this community. If you are in a position where coming out would put your livelihood at risk, would put your housing security at risk, would put your physical safety at risk, you are not obligated to come out.
Right.
It is nobody's place to tell you how out you should be. You are the only person who can control that. This is where, but I will say, every little piece of you being yourself, you taking care of yourself is a revolutionary act. You existing is a revolutionary act.
Exactly.
Every little piece that you can be out. If you can post anonymously on internet forums, right? It doesn't matter. If you are able to speak your truth, that is a revolutionary act. And speaking your truth in any medium could provide a little bit more courage, could provide a little bit more community, could provide a little bit more reassurance to somebody else within this community, could provide more solidarity within this community, right? We are stronger together than we are apart. And any little bit, I have done this a million times, right? Any little bit that you can talk about your experience with somebody else Even if it's just anonymously, even if it's only inside the community, every little bit strengthens your self-worth and strengthens the selfhood of somebody else. And we build ourselves up. We build each other up by talking about and sharing our experiences and affirming one another's experiences.
Right.
It does not matter if it is feasible for you to be out. Talking about living your experience is revolutionary. It is necessary. And it is also necessary for you to take care of yourselves. So take care of yourselves.
Take care of yourselves.
And this is where allyhood, for those of you who are straight people, who are cis people, right? We need you, especially those of us who are not safe coming out. We need you. We need you to speak up for us before we ask you to. If I knew in my workplace that my boss, that my coworkers would have my back if I were to be out as bisexual, if they were to express to me that they, or express near me that I could hear that they would have my back, that I would not have any, that I would not have to handle the fallout from being out on my own, I would come out at my job. But I don't know that. And I don't feel like I can handle that on my own without having fallout that would put my livelihood at risk. Right. So I am not out. If you are an ally, if you think that you are an ally, if you want to call yourself an ally, speak out before you're asked. Even if you don't know any LGBTQ people in your immediate vicinity, if you hear somebody say a thing that is discriminatory against LGBTQ people, speak out against it. Because that act is not that dangerous for you, right? It's not completely not dangerous, but it's not that dangerous to you, but it is a visible way to tell somebody who's afraid to be out that they have somebody in there that they can count on. Somebody that they know will have their back if something happens, right? Somebody, if you're at work and one of your coworkers says something homophobic, say something to that person, because your person in the next cubicle who's not out at work now knows that if something were to happen, that you have their back. That's what allyship is for the LGBTQ community, right? Allyship is not showing up is not just showing up to celebrate with us at Pride, right? Allyship is speaking out even if you don't know if anybody is there to hear you. So, there's your call to action. LGBTQIA people, talk to each other. Talk to other people. You are revolutionary. You are a revolution in yourself. Allies, people who want to be allies, speak up for us, even if you don't think we're there to hear you. Mm-hmm. Don't speak up because you want a pat on the back. Speak up because it's the right thing to do.
Right. Be the support.
Yes. All right. We are running long today. I don't know if you know.
We are running long, but it's important. It's important stuff.
It's important stuff, and I'll be quick on the sex segment.
And with that being said, and all this talk of being revolutionary and such, we're going to throw it back to Negro Terror with their song Invasion.
In the cold daylight, 137,000 of men, and I took a bullet right up your head.
right, guys, welcome back. Thanks again to Negro Terror for giving us our music this week. You guys are amazing. I really look forward to talking to you guys soon. I am going to be fast on the sex segment today. So given our news topic about North Carolina, I'm circling back around. I promised you guys I was going to do this. I am going to talk consent again. I don't think I did it justice the last time that we did it. That was a rough show. And given that this is a discussion that is still being had, and something that is apparently legally controversial, right? Like legally a gray area. I'm gonna come and reiterate some things. All right, consent, guys. Consent is very, very simple. It just means respecting the autonomy of the person that you're having sex with, of the person with whom you're trying to initiate physical contact. Consent, at its very core, means that every person is in charge of their own body, and they get to make the decisions about what happens to it. That's all it means, right? That should not be controversial. Right, Keem?
Yes.
Is this hard?
No. Despite what I've been told this week, that telling someone that consent is a thing is controversial, it is not.
It is not controversial, and it's not hard. Consent means that you're in charge of what happens to your body. That's it. Consent means that nobody gets to touch you if you don't want them to. Consent means that you have the right to put restrictions on the kind of physical touch that you have. Consent means that you can say, sorry, I don't hug, right? Consent means that you can say, no, I don't feel like kissing you right now. Consent means that you can say, like I did once on a date, and it turned out extremely well for me. I showed up to this date and we started making out, and I said, I'm not going to take my clothes off today. And we had a great freaking time. Like, you have consent just means that you are in control of what happens to your body. And I don't understand why this is somehow controversial. Consent means that you can say, sorry, I thought that I was into this, but XYZ. It doesn't matter what reason you give, right? Consent means that you can say, you don't have to give a reason. You can say, no, I don't feel like having sex. You're not obligated to say why. Consent means that you can say, sorry, I was feeling it at first, but now I'm not really into this. Can we stop? And you're not obligated to say why. And that person should be obligated to stop, because you are now you don't want this touch anymore, right? Your taste has changed. Your mind has changed. Whatever. You don't want this physical contact. That's it. That's all consent means. Right? And I think that quibbling about the legality of something it's not unimportant, but it's not totally the point either. Right? Like, it shouldn't matter if something is technically legal, right? If you understand that consent means that your partner is in charge of what happens to their own body, if your partner says, sorry, can we stop? You respecting their autonomy means that you stop, right? I heard this thing, this phrase was spoken with regards to safer sex practices, right? To where the person with the most restrictive safer sex practices is the one whose boundaries get respected, right? This boils down to like this. It's not like least common denominator kind of negotiation, right? Like this is all or nothing, right? If the person that you want to have sex with says, I use barriers for everything, otherwise I don't have sex, then you use barriers for everything, and that's just how it is, right? Because that's the kind of sex that this person is consenting to, right? And this gets into also, what's it called? Stealthing?
Oh my God.
Which is a phenomenon not because it's a new thing that people are suddenly doing. It's because there's a word for it now and everybody wants to talk about it.
And people are talking about it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
For those of you who live under a rock or just not on Facebook all the time, I don't know. Keem, where did you hear about this first?
I heard about it in real life. I heard about it just being a teenager. But in the new swing of things, I heard about it on Facebook.
Okay. See, I never saw it on Facebook, but it was in all the podcasts that I listened to. Anyway, for those of you who live under a rock, or just don't know that, or just aren't hip on the new terminology, stealthing is when, again, with the heteronormative language, but this is a very, like, heteronormative, like, gender violence kind of phenomenon, right? But I'm going to avoid it. Like, so, stealthing is when a person with a penis is having penetrative sex, has negotiated penetrative sex with a condom, and then at some point during the sex removes the condom without the knowledge or consent of his partner, their partner, whatever, right? So these two people have agreed to use a condom, and then the person wearing the condom removes it at some point and then proceeds to continue having sex without a condom on, without the knowledge of the person being penetrated. Which there's a country now in Europe, Denmark maybe, or the Netherlands, one of those, where this went to court. A man did this to a woman, and she took him to court for it, and it was ruled that that is sexual assault. Right. Because guess what, guys? It is. This is sexual assault. Sorry. Those of you who have ever done this, come to terms with it, because that's assault, right? Your partner entered into sex with you under the understanding that you would be having this kind of sex, and then you changed to a different kind of sex midstream without checking if that was okay. Right. That's assault. But yeah, so consent just means that you're in charge of what happens to your body, and your partner needs to respect your autonomy. Otherwise, that is a violation of your consent.
Right. And this has been coming up for me personally, in the past 2 weeks or so. Respecting consent and respecting a person's boundaries. I'm of course won't say names and stuff, but I have a partner who, from the very moment we started seeing each other, said it. As far as like stuff for physical and sexual nature, it takes time. So until it's, she feels comfortable with that sort of thing, it was off the table. And Esme can tell you, I'm a sexual person. Mm-hmm. So over these past few months, which have been incredible, I've loved every second of it, and I continue to love it. I've, had to respect and move at this person's pace, my partner's pace, respecting their boundaries, respecting their barriers, and being informed of what they are, asking, okay, can I do this? Can I do that? To keep consent rolling, to not violate someone. And I think that is very important, because, and to go back to the Pride Month and stuff, there are people out here who are on the asexual side of things. Mm-hmm. that you might find yourself in a relationship with. Your asexuals, your gray sexuals, your demisexuals, so on and so forth. And they're going to have boundaries set. They're going to have things that they're going to do and they're not going to do. And if you're in a relationship with this person, you have to respect that. You have to respect their boundaries and what they consent to and what they do not consent to.
Here's the thing, though, particularly with Pride, I'm going to say this because I know a lot of cis gay dudes who have a real problem with violating like people's personal space. I cannot tell you the number of times that I have been in particularly like an supposedly like LGBTQ inclusive space, right, at Pride or at a gay bar or what have you, and been approached and touched by a gay man, almost exclusively always a cis gay man, who is now all up in my business, right? I had at the last Pride that I went to, I was there with an organization. I was working a booth, and one of my friends, who happens to be a cis gay man, came up with some of his friends who I had never met. And one of his friends, very large guy, probably 6'1" or 6'2", kind of broad-shouldered, strong person, comes up to me, and my friend introduces us, and then this guy proceeds to wrap his arms around me and pick me up in a hug. And I'm like, the hell are you doing? Right? I literally was introduced to you 3.5 seconds ago, and now you think that it's okay to institute this full body contact kind of hug. I was like, dude, that is not okay. So, for those of you who are going out in public and doing things, if you like to hug people, okay, that's great for you. But don't just go hug people, because people have different boundaries than you, and they are not necessarily going to lead with, hi, I'm X and I don't hug, right? So if you want to go hug somebody, like say, hi, blah, 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 let's have this, like go, like maybe you hug after you like have a conversation with somebody, right? Let's say go, blah, 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 this is a good conversation, it was nice to meet you, do you hug, right? It's not hard to say, do you hug? And then somebody can say yes or no, right? But phrase it in, like, ask.
See,
Number one, before you institute physical contact with somebody, ask.
I think this is where a lot of people get caught up with, in the area of consent. I think this is where a lot of people get caught up and make mistakes. It's the one thing is you can ask. You should ask. You should be asking.
Yes. As a matter of course, ask.
And if you're confused about something, ask.
Yes.
If let's say you're in the moment or something, like you're in the moment of like we'll go with sex, like penetration.
Yeah.
And your partner seems uncomfortable with something.
Stop and ask.
Stop and ask. Because I know people who they saw something happening, but they weren't sure.
Yeah.
They just weren't sure. And they continued just because they thought, it's going. If they wanted to stop, they would have stopped. That is not always the case.
Yeah. Do you know the three buzzwords? Especially for doing like stuff in like with sexual things, right? This is now taking it back to sex and taking it out of the context of like everyday physical contact with people. The three touchstones, right? Is that consent needs to be affirmative. That's not consent means no means no. It's consent is yes means yes, right? Consent is affirmative, enthusiastic, and ongoing.
Very right.
Right? Yes means yes. Your partner is definitely into it, not kind of wishy-washy about it. And consent, if consent is revoked, it's done, right? You're done. You stop.
Right. I think if we get more people who are this is gonna sound almost the opposite of what people think sex is supposed to be. But think.
Oh, guys, there are so many ways. There are so many ways. Can I take you down a little sexy trip right now? Are you ready
sexy.
for this one?
Go for it.
If you, at any point, are ever wishy-washy, right? Or your partner seems like you are not sure if your partner's consent is enthusiastic and ongoing as you're doing things with them, stop for just a second, look your partner in the eye, and say, "Tell me what you want me to do." But say it in your really sexy voice. Oh my God, if you were ever confused about your partner's enthusiastic ongoing consent, if you were ever concerned that you did not have that, that is going to bring that out, right?
So that's why you do that.
Yeah. Also, it's really hot to make have somebody describe what they want you to do to their body. Like, that's just hot. Also, can be very informative. So if you ever do that to somebody, listen carefully to what they say. Because they're going to tell you exactly how they want to be touched. But, consent is a serious topic, you guys. Consent is serious. It's important to get people's consent. But getting consent doesn't have to be sexy. Or it doesn't have to be not sexy, rather. Like, there are a million ways. There are a million ways to ask your partner if, to check in with your partner if they're still into it, right? Say, does this feel good? Say, do you like it this way or that way? Say, like I said, tell me what you want me to do. Right? There are so many different ways to check in about this, right? If your partner is looking like they're not totally sure about what's going on, and you're not sure if you have their enthusiastic consent, pause. Say, "Hey, I'm going to go get a drink of water. Do you need some water?" Say, "Sorry, let me pause for a second. I have to go to the bathroom." Give your partner a minute. And then when you come back in, use that as it's a pause in the activity. Use that as an opportunity to check in. You don't have to keep pushing forward at the same pace in order for this to be something that's good for you, right? You can pause, you can dial it back a little bit, you can take a breather, you can get a drink of water, whatever. And the same thing, this came up on a podcast that I was listening to. If you are in the moment with somebody and they excuse themselves to go get a drink of water or to go to the bathroom or whatever, use that as an opportunity then to check in with them again before you start up again. Because it is possible sometimes that a lot of people are not comfortable talking about, "Hey, I'm not sure if I'm feeling this." And then they use that moment of discomfort, and in order to process that moment of discomfort, they go excuse themselves, right? So that your partner may need water, and they may need to use the bathroom, or they may be trying to give themselves a moment of space to process some kind of feeling that they were having about whether or not they're sure if this is the kind of experience they want to be having. That's a possibility. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you did something wrong. They could just be, I don't know, having an emotion. They could be really stressed out. They could be whatever. You could have, I don't know, maybe their hip hurts. I don't know. There's any number of things, and they don't necessarily mean that you did something wrong, but you pushing forward and pressuring them if they're not sure, if they're trying to give themselves that space, is something that's wrong. And so if your partner, no, I mean, if either of you goes and excuses yourselves for anything, just check in for a second before you start up again. Say,
Everything all right?
yeah, well, I mean, you don't even have to be as serious as is everything all right. Just say, you can express it as, or you can do it as a way to say something that you're feeling about it. Right? Like, express yourself, say, maybe say, whew, that got really intense there for a second. Or I do that one a lot because I get overwhelmed by things easily, right? Just check in and it's, you don't have to have a long, serious conversation unless your partner needs you to have a long, serious conversation. But you can't also assume that that you're going to pick everything up right exactly where you left off.
Honestly, the one I use is having fun.
Yes. Yeah, like there's a lot of different ways that you can do it. And it's important to do that. It's important. It's important to make sure, especially for dudes, guys, it's especially for dudes. Dudes are sometimes bad at recognizing if they're being pushy, if they're being forceful, because
not even sometimes. Not even sometimes. Dudes are, especially straight males. Hey, part of the privilege is us being completely oblivious.
Yeah, and it's a socialization thing, right? Like,
right.
We exist in America where dudes have power, right? It's just how it is. Dudes have more power than women. Like, it's a thing. And so if you know that you have more power, know that you will probably be pushy. You will probably be forceful at some point, and you don't want to be doing that. You want to be aware of when you're doing that. You want to check in and make sure that you're not doing that, right? You don't want to do that, right? Make sure that your partner is enthusiastically consenting at every point in the process. Like, anyway. That's my second rant about consent. I'm sure that I repeated a lot of my material, but consent, guys. Consent is very simple. I'm going to reiterate this. Consent is simple. Consent is just acknowledging and respecting any other, not even your partner, any person's. Consent is respecting and acknowledging every person's right to make decisions about the things that happen to their body. Consent is every single person has the right to decide what does and does not happen to their own body. That's all it is.
And be aware. Like, take the time and be aware of the things that are happening, because you don't want, like, for the ones who are actively not trying to go out and commit sexual assault.
Yeah.
Be aware.
Yep.
So you don't accidentally commit sexual assault.
Yep. You don't want that.
You do not want that.
Leads to badness.
Oh.
All right. That's my rant.
That's the rant. I think we both ranted on that one.
Yes.
It's
important.
It is important. Oh my God. It's a lot of these things we've been talking about recently have been coming up a lot, and that's why we're both so up in arms right now.
Yes.
So yeah, very important.
Yes.
With that being said, I think that brings us to the end of the show.
Yes, it does.
As we leave, of course, we're going to have some resources. We have some links on the history of Pride that I'm going to give. I also have an interview. I think it's from Out. I think it's from Out magazine with one of the people who were there at the Stonewall Riots. That can give you a little background on everything. But yeah, we'll give you a chance to go and do your own research. We'll also have links for our news stories, so you can be just as angry as we are. And if you want to go and give Phil Bryan a piece of your mind, please do, and tell him I sent you. So we're going to have that. I'm also going to be giving a link to lgbtcenters.org. There you can find local, state, and national groups and organizations to help and advocate for the LGBTQIA community. And like she was saying earlier, for those who can't be as visible as they would like, this could be your avenue to do what you can. But yeah, it's quite a few groups that you can get involved in. This is really important, especially since it's, once again, we're highlighting that it's Pride Month, and this is our final show for the month. These places will be your places to go to, do what you can. In any case, I also like to plug this week. I don't know when it's going to air, but we're lining up a spot with Chris Watson of the Podunk Polymath podcast. We're trying to get our scheduling together, but we are going to be doing an interview with him and talk about, who knows what we're talking about, but it's sure to be fun. Chris is an awesome guy. Probably one of our biggest supporters, especially since the reboot.
Yes.
So Podunk Polymath, check it out. Like I said, I don't know when exactly we'll be on. I'll post that as soon as I know onto our Facebook page. So you can check it out. But the Podunk Polymath, look for us on there very, very soon. Also, special thank you to Negro Terror for being our music guest for the week.
Yay!
And look for them next week, hopefully, fingers crossed, for a short interview, or they might actually be our guests for the week, which should be very interesting. I talked to them. Oh man, they should provide us some spirited conversation.
Excellent.
They're awesome. Go check them out. I'll also be providing links to where to find their music. They just dropped their EP recently. So you can go find that on Bandcamp. And once again, I will give you have links for their music. But once again, very, very, very big thanks to Negro Terror. I love the name. I was like, my goodness, it's a great fucking name. With that, we are. Guess you would you like to add anything?
No, I don't have anything.
So
What?
as we close Pride Month, I would like to say once again, all our LGBTQ listeners, friends, family, loved ones, even people you don't love, you are amazing. You are human. You deserve everything that every other person has. You are loved. We stand with you. We stand beside you. Hell, at times we'll maybe even stand in front of you, take a shot. But we love you. And we got your back. So, from the Outer Voices podcast, This has been Keem. And I'll say the short form, Esme.
Thank you.
And from us, we are out.
But there are these things that matter, and they really fucking matter. There's like 4 things that matter, and they really fucking matter. I mean, objectively, I mean, you should care, especially you, if you thought about it for 5 fucking minutes.